actually, it wasn't recording. Good call, Natalie. We're recording now. Cool.
Excellent.
All right. So just to give you a bit of background, my name is Rhiannon. I'm a former UTS team member, and this is my first year on the SAE committee. Some of you might have seen me last year as a business presentation judge, and this year I have jumped on board to help organize the event. I live locally in the border Northeast area in Albury. Been down here for a couple of years now and love living in this area. So I'll turn it over to Natalie, and she can tell you about why she's here.
Hi everyone. I also am an alumni of the competition. I spent quite a few years with the Monash Motorsport team in the early 2010s, from about 2011 to 2014. I'm been on the organising committee now for this event for probably about 3 years now. And I also live locally. I'm only about a 40-minute drive from Winton Raceway, living in Rutherglen, which is a wine region nearby. So it's really nice having people who are local to come and be feet on the ground. So we hope that you guys enjoy the content of this presentation. So both Rhi and I have been judging business presentation for the last couple of years now. So yeah, we'll be able to give some kind of insights and feedback and some examples of what works well and what doesn't. So hopefully when we see you at the end of the year at Winton, you'll know what you're doing. So shall we kick it off?
Sounds good.
Great. All right. Now, what we're going to cover off first today is some feedback from last year. So giving you some insights as to what did and didn't work last year and some areas for improvement. Many of you have probably heard us speak at comp last year, so we'll be just covering the same notes. So some of this might not be new to you, but hopefully you'll still find it useful.
It's always good to hear it again.
Yep. We'll then go through event scoring and our expectation as judges. So you kind of have an understanding of the scoring structure and how it works. We'll then also follow up with all of the participants in this webinar with some example score sheets, etc. So that way you know what's in front of us. So when you walk into that room, you know what to expect. We'll then have a quick run through of some sample questions, which again, we'll be able to send on to you. So you'll have an idea of the kinds of things that we might ask and the kinds of gaps we need to fill when you guys are standing up in front of us. And then finally, we'll also in that email send out some examples, some video recorded examples from around the world of some really high quality presentations. So you can, for those of you who haven't seen a really good presentation before, it'll give you a really good idea of what we are expecting as judges. So we might get started then and cover off some presentation feedback from last year. So let me just bring that up. Oh, there it is. Beautiful. All right. So I'm going to cover over what scored well last year, and Rhi gets the lovely job of going over what didn't score well and what areas need improvement. So some of the things that we find to score really well and what really engages us as judges is memorization of the presentation and not needing to read off slides or notes. Really, it comes down to good preparation and practice with your team. So there's an enormous difference between a team that have rehearsed together and a team that has not. And we will judge pretty strongly based on that. That can make or break a presentation, to be honest. We really appreciate it when people look relaxed and are engaging with their audience. So you've got to look at this as sort of a bit of a Shark Tank style situation. You know, we're a room of investors looking to invest in your company and your brand, and having someone who's engaging with the judges, looking us in the eye, not reading off notes makes all the difference. So we really respect it when people are able to pull that off. We also really like it when the imagery and video that supports the presentation is of high quality and really works to help sell your product. So there's some organizations or teams that do this really well, and we just love it when the images and all the video is really complementary to what you're saying. Remember, though, not to talk over video with sound in it. That's also really kind of distracting because we don't know whether to concentrate on you or the video. And also make sure your videos don't go too long, because, you know, we all have short attention spans, and we're here to, you know, invest in a product and you don't have long to sell it to us. So I would certainly suggest with video and image content, make sure it's really complementary to what you're saying. And certainly along that vein, make sure that you're not reading exactly what's on the slides, because there's no point putting on the slide if you're going to say it to us. So use videos and photos as a way to complement your content. Answer the brief. So we had a few teams last year who didn't answer the brief as per the rules and the guidelines provided to you. So make sure, go back and read the rules and the addendum and make sure that you feel really confident about why you're in that room. We can have the best presentation in the world, but if it doesn't actually answer the question that you're asked, we can't score you accordingly. So we really suggest making sure you do your homework, don't make assumptions, and check all of that sort of stuff. What else? Oh yeah. Answering questions, which is always a fun one. So we'll be covering that a bit later on, but being thoughtful and articulate with your answers. Feel free to pause and take a moment to think about how you're going to answer it. We had a few times where teams didn't listen necessarily and answered the question they wish they had been asked, but not the question which we asked them. So make sure you stop, pause. Feel free to ask us to repeat the question if you need us to. But getting that right can really pull you over the line. It's really important, and the way you creatively interact with the judges is always a pleasure. So yeah, that would be one.
Just a pro tip with those questions. So with everyone that you bring into the presentation, expect that they might get asked a question. So I know in the judging stream that I was in last year, we specifically would ask a technical question for the tech expert who was in the room, because we wanted to make sure that everyone who was presenting was actually able to contribute and actually had a voice. So make sure that, everyone who you bring into the presentation is able to answer those potential questions that we ask. And when we go through those, you'll get an idea of what it is that we're looking for with the skill set and the resources that you bring into the room.
So the best way to do that is, I suppose, when you guys come into the room and you've got your 10-minute setup time, just before we start or just as we start, you're welcome to obviously have people who spectate, but it's really important at the start of your presentation that you articulate who's participating in the presentation and who's spectating. So what we need you to do is introduce to us and explain who the people are who might be answering questions. So then we have the opportunity to ask questions that they can answer. If there are just spectators in the room and you haven't engaged them as part of your presentation, they start answering questions, that's not really allowed. So we need to make sure that you point out clearly who's participating in presentation, so we know who to ask questions to, and also let us know what, I suppose, their specialty is or what role they're playing.
And it helps us as judges formulate the questions that we want to ask as well, if we know what we can and can't ask based on who you've brought into the room.
One of the other great things that we like is when people understand and feel confident with their finances. We're not expecting crazy financial sheets or anything, but you can feel free to keep it simple and use whole round numbers. It's more showing that you understand the math and understand how to run a business. So don't feel like you need to complicate it or make it really difficult. As long as you can, if we ask a question, you can quite confidently explain it or answer it. That's great. And feel free to be realistic. We don't expect 72% growth over 2 years or anything, so just step back and go, what's real, and feel free to do a bit of research or ask other teams or alumni what their experience has been, so you can get that one a little bit kind of closer to where we'd like to see it. We love a bit of props. So we had some teams bring in some fantastic props last year, everything from engines to parts to team merchandise to flags or other things like that. It's always great. It's not going to make or break your presentation, but it certainly adds to the authenticity of the experience. So if you're thinking about it and ahhing about it, go for it. We really enjoy it. Remember, you're selling a product, so things should look good. So that means your presentation, your props, and what you wear. So first impressions count, and the teams that put the effort into their personal presentation as well as the presentation that they gave made all the difference. So play the part, come dressed to impress, and it'll make an enormous difference to the judges that you see in the room. And the final thing, the most important thing, is tell us what you want. So we're a room full of investors. We want to know what you want from us. There were quite a few teams who actually never articulated what they wanted. Did you want money? Did you want in-kind services? Did you need sponsorship? Did you want cash up front, or did you want it over 5 years?
Did you just want mentorship? Don't know. What did you want from us?
So make that really clear. And, within the first probably 30 seconds to a minute, we're a room full of busy, wealthy, investing people. So sell us the dream. So I think they're probably the key things that really worked well for us and that stood out. So we'll now move into some of the stuff that maybe didn't work so well and areas for improvement.
Yeah. So one thing that you have to keep in mind is this is the business side of the event. This is the one portion of the event that's not about the design or, you know, the cool, I'm not an engineer, sorry guys. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about the business model behind what it is you're doing, because in order to be able to, you know, design and manufacture and do all of this stuff, even in an engineering sense, you need to have people who are going to buy your products. So you have to have this business knowledge. So coming into the presentation with too much technical knowledge, it's not relevant for this event. It's good to have it if we want a better understanding. You do get a lot of judges who come through a presentation event who do have a bit of a technical background, so they might want to delve into that. But just keep in mind that that's not the premise of what we're doing in this particular event. Another thing that we did get a lot of last year was these beautiful printed and bound documents that were 10, 20, 30 pages long with all of your financial information and your specs and all of your background information. We're not going to look at it. We do not have time in the amount of time that we're allocated to do your scoring, for you to do your presentation. We won't look at it. So if you do want to have some backup information, that's fantastic. Keep it to a couple of pages max and really highlight in there what you want us to get out of it. But just giving us a 20-page document, we're not going to read it. It's going to be a waste.
Yeah. And if you choose to bring in something like that, reference it through your presentation. So you might say, for further detail on the finances and regarding breakdown of return on investment, turn to page 4 or something like that. Otherwise, you know, we've got, you know, all of 10, 20 minutes with you. So make it useful.
For a detailed understanding of who we're targeting, go to page 3. Yeah. Whatever you want to do, just make sure it's relevant to your presentation and why we're all there. So Natalie sort of touched on this one already, but a lack of realism. So whether it's, you know, your manufacturing numbers are off the scale, or, you know, your profits are really high, or you know, even valuation that you're asking for. You know, if you're coming to us and saying that you want $2 million from us for a 15% stake in your company, that's a lot for an investor to give over. So you need to be able to justify why you need that, and just be realistic in your expectations. I was a big Shark Tank fan last year, so I think I kept saying, you know, watch Shark Tank, get some clues from how they run it, and that'll really give you a good idea of how to value your business and how to, you know, be realistic about what you're asking for.
Pleasure.
A lack of direction or contents at the start of your presentation. So it's really important, because we have such a short amount of time together, that you make it obvious, you know, what we're going to get out of your presentation, what you're going to take us through. It just helps us follow along with what you're saying, and the information that you're presenting. Yes, exactly. It tells the story, and the story is so important with what it is that we're doing here, because the story encapsulates everything. Everyone has a product. Everyone has shareholders they have to answer to. But why is your product different than the people who are coming in after you? What does your story say about your business that makes me, as an investor or even as a potential customer, want to choose you over the next guy down the street, basically?
Yep, definitely.
So again, I already touched on this. Financials don't have to be overcomplicated, but they do need to make sense. One of our judges last year, he's coming on board again this year. He was ruthless with going through some of these financials, and he asked some really good questions. So just keep that in mind. Make sure your financials are on point. Again, keep them simple. Don't go crazy, but make sure it tells us what we need to know.
Yep.
And again, omitting key information. You know, I think we had some groups last year that didn't talk about their target audience, or didn't talk about how they were actually going to sell their cars. So that's really important stuff that you need to make sure you have in your presentation, because it's a huge portion of what we're looking for.
Yep.
And again, not being able to answer questions. Judges might ask some doozies. So just make sure that you're confident in being able to answer those questions. And even if you need to think about it for a second, or even if, you know, you need to get in a huddle quickly and confer, do it. We'd rather you take the time and answer the question correctly than stumble through it, mumble through it, and not really give us what we're looking for.
Yeah, we're certainly not, when we ask questions, we're not trying to trip you up or make your life difficult. We're actually genuinely trying to find information to help us make a judgment call and a scoring call on your presentation. Yeah. So obviously at the end of this webinar, you'll get sent a heap of content that'll help with that. And so you'll understand, you know, generally the reason behind our question is to find out more information. And if you don't know your product and know your content well enough, it'll be really obvious.
We want to give you the best possible score that we can give you. And a lot of times asking these questions helps with that. But also a lot of times asking those questions is because some key information was omitted from the presentation. So just try to make sure you're thinking about that when you're putting information, when you're putting the presentation together as well.
Yeah, great. So I think that kind of covers a lot of that kind of general feedback
from last year.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to explain on a closing on this section that, you know, we'll have between probably 12 to 16 judges with us in December this year. So we recruit a huge amount of judges because we have to have so many streams because we've got so many people to judge.
Yeah.
And what we do is those judges come from a spectrum of backgrounds, everything from business, accounting, marketing, engineering, all sorts. And they actually rotate through the stream. So no two team will generally have the same group of judges. So it's an absolute, it's a game of chess really for us, but it just means that every team is presented with a set of different minds and different ways of thinking and judging so that we have a really even playing field and we can standardize the judging as the best way possible. So you don't know if you're going to get a curly finance question or if you're going to get one about marketing. So make sure you feel like you're confident across all your information and so that the judges can get the information they require.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. All right. So next on our agenda is covering off event scoring and expectations for judges. So we'll send some support documents out to you, but what we can tell you is that the way we score is out of 50. So we have we've got 5 sections which we can score you out of 10. So the first section is content. The second one is organization. The third is visual aids, delivery, and then how you answer your questions. So you can score up to 10 in any of those sections. So what we'll do is we'll send I suppose our scoring sheet so you can see what we use when we sit down and judge you. But basically this helps us, I guess, rationalize how we judge you. It lets us break down each section and make sure that everyone's judged on an even playing field. So it's interesting because often, you know, we might get feedback or get asked after judging, I only got like a 6 or a 7, you know, where did I go wrong? And I'm like, to be honest, that's actually a really good score. So it's, I mean, it is competitive, but, you know, don't feel that you needed perfect 10s for everything to do really well because really there aren't many teams, if ever, that ever score
a perfect.
Yeah, it's very rare. And they're outliers. So, you know, don't feel like you did a bad job if you got a 6. Generally, it means you've done a pretty good job. So we'll be able to provide some more information around that so you guys can probably plan a little bit better this year.
And then with the scoring as well. So we worked really hard to make sure that the scoring is as fair as possible. So back in my day, when I went through presentation, we got our score sheets and we had 3 judges that, you know, scored us within a couple of points of each other, and it was a really good score. And then we had one judge who, you know, was like 10 points behind the rest of them. And, you know, we had no idea why these 3 scored us really well and this guy over here didn't. So we've worked really hard to make sure that we're getting rid of those kind of outlier scores. And that's part of that rotation that we're doing. It's part of having the standardized score sheet. You know, we have conversations at the end of kind of a big group of presentations that come through. If any of them kind of look a bit funky, we go and say, all right, why did you score this person this way sometimes, or this team this way? Sometimes that judge who scored a bit lower might have a really compelling case, and it's like, okay, actually, yeah, that's right. Or sometimes the other 3 judges might have a really compelling case for, well, like, why are you knocking them off for that? That's ridiculous. So we've put a lot of effort into making these scores as fair and unbiased as possible. So we really hope that you guys notice that. Notice that this year. Sorry, there's a little person.
Sorry, my toddler's here. don't mind him. Yeah, and further to that point, it's really important that we as judges debrief after every session, and then we will also debrief about 3 or 4 times during the day as an entire group of 14 judges. So we go through after every presentation, then at each break, we go into detailed review, we ask questions, we assess each other's scores, we make sure there's rotation, we do our absolute best to make sure when you get your score sheets back that you don't go, I feel like I was disadvantaged by that judge, because that's what we're trying to avoid, having both been there and done that once upon a time. It's something we take really seriously, and we want to provide really constructive scoring for everybody. And we also encourage all of our judges, and they're briefed before the event, to provide written feedback. So if there's things they really liked or really didn't like, they need to be able to articulate that and give back to the teams so that you guys can build on that for next year. We don't want to leave any blank spaces.
No, exactly. And then in saying that, we're also really clear with the judges with what we expect to come out of your presentations. So that's things like, having that connection with your audience that you're marketing to, that you're wanting to sell your product to. What connection are you creating via your marketing messaging, via the design of your car, via the way you're choosing to sell it, what your business model is. All of that thing creates that connection with your audience, which is so important when you're wanting to sell a product, is having that and having that connection with the market, so they know that if I want an open-wheeled race car, I'm going to this group of people over the guys down the road. And again, those visual aids are so important in that. They really help to tell that story, but they can also, you can fall back on them, and that doesn't work either, because then we're just kind of all standing there watching a movie for 5 minutes, which doesn't work either. So you need to have that balance, and especially just be able to back up what you're saying. So we expect that if we ask you a question, you'll be able to give us that answer, and it will be realistic, it will be viable, it will make sense, even if it's a crazy sort of value proposition, or a crazy sounding profit margin. Back it up. Like if you can back it up with research, with real evidence, back it up. And there is obviously room for a bit of wiggle room, because we know this isn't.
It's not real life.
It's not real life, but
you're not selling us a spaceship.
Yeah, exactly. Just be able to back up everything you can say. Yeah, and that's really all we're expecting.
Yep. Well, I think that covers probably most of the detailed content.
Yeah.
What we're going to do is, like I said before, is in the follow-up email, we'll send through some example questions which might just kind of help you hone your content around what we're looking for. We'll also send through some links to some videos of winning presentations. So we'll send you through some links of some of the finalists from Formula Student Germany and Formula Student UK, just to give you some amazing benchmarks. Unfortunately, I don't have any recorded content of Australian presentations, so these are the next best thing. That said, they play by the same rules generally, and their quality and their caliber of presentation is exceptional. So we'll make sure we send them, so you can do some light YouTubing in the lead up to come.
Yeah, and in saying that, when we do this presentation next year, for any of you guys who record your presentations, send them through to us. If you're happy to share your presentation with the next crop of students coming through, we'd love to have it.
Yeah.
And it just helps with that knowledge transfer, and it helps make this particular event so much better.
It does. Yeah. Sharing knowledge makes us all better. So hopefully we'll get to a place where Australian content is recorded more successfully, but in the meantime, with some lovely international examples to rely on.
Yeah. And even, and as I said, alluded to earlier, watch some old Shark Tank episodes,
Dragon's Den, that kind of thing.
Get an understanding of what an investor is really looking for from one of these presentations, because that's exactly what we're doing here.
Yep.
So it's really important to have as much of that sort of real world understanding as you can.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, I think we've covered what we really wanted to cover today at a high level. Feel free to type away in the chat box if you've got any questions, and we'll stay online for probably the next 5 minutes or so and cover those off. So hopefully we can answer those questions, and if not, we'll definitely get back to you with more detail.
Yeah, and in saying that, like, if you guys don't have any questions just yet, if you're just kind of digesting all of this and thinking, oh my God, what are we going on about? You would have seen my contact details at the bottom of a couple of emails that I've sent over the last few days. Feel free to email me directly, and I can always answer those questions for you. And again, this recording will go up on the SAE website, along with some of those links and everything else, so you will be able to have access to that information. So we might just give it a couple minutes. And we've got a question. The SAE International 2019 rules set change the scope and brief of the event quite significantly. Is OzComp going to follow this or stick with the old format?
This year, we're sticking with our normal format as per the rules and the details that would have come out to you at the start of the year. It is up to the committee to decide whether those rules change or update, and at this point it hasn't been discussed at committee level. So of course, if any rules change, obviously those details will be sent out to every team at the start of every year, but so far that conversation hasn't been had yet. Okay. Thanks, good question.
Yep, and again, if you guys want to take some time to think about it, that's fine. Just send us an email, and we're happy to answer after the competition. Got another question. Someone advised our team that the actual brief has changed.
One major change that has happened this year, which you might be referring to, is we no longer require, as you probably know, because we're past that point now, a business case at the start of the year.
No business logic case.
Yeah, which is probably a relief for a lot of you. We used to have to score your presentation and judge it in mind of your business logic case that you had to present around April at the start of the year. And of course, everyone's journey changes significantly between April and December. So we won't need to worry about that. So it means that you can come to the presentation event fresh without needing to worry about what you sent 6 months ago or 8 months ago, and just get on with the job, and the judges are there with a clean slate without any preconceptions of your presentation. So that would be the biggest change this year. But otherwise, in terms of presenting a business case and a marketable race car for investors to invest in, that's still the case this year.
Yeah. So just another question about visual aids and what we're looking for when it comes to a visual aid. So do we have product videos, launch videos, examples of advertisements? Really, that decision is up to you guys. I realize it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but it's your presentation. It's what you think will work with the product and the material that you've put together. We love to watch a good video, but again, make sure that it's not too much and not overpowering. We'd love to see some advertisements, some mock-ups of cool. Some advertisements. Yeah. That's something that we haven't really had much of. If you have a launch video of the car driving around the track, that's great, but again, don't let that dominate. Make it relevant. And then again, actually, we probably should have popped this in the what didn't work too well category. Was just make sure that you've got backups upon backups upon backups if you've got a video or got a presentation really good point. You're plugging in.
We don't provide, and I believe it says somewhere in the rules, but I could be wrong, we don't provide any connections or anything like. We just provide a projector and a screen. So make sure you come with your laptop, any adapters you might need for HDMI cables or VGA cables, backup power, all those things, because often we have teams scrambling at the last minute to go find the right adapter. So come prepared. You might bring, and also, I mean, we're used to seeing PowerPoints, but I know some teams have used other programs, particularly on Macs, which sometimes take a while to format. So please make sure that you're prepared and you've got backup options. Yeah. So that was a good point, actually.
Yeah, and with the presentations, again, everyone loves a PowerPoint, but think outside the box a little bit, whether you use Prezi or you do something else that's a little bit more interactive and a little bit
cool. Oh, we've just been given a time warning.
We've been given a 5-minute warning, guys, so we'll move it along. But yeah, so short answer is whatever is going to support your presentation the best, that's what we want to see. And if you don't want to break anything, that's fine. Tell us why. Yeah. Tell us why you haven't brought us anything. It's just all about that transparency and context.
Yeah. If you don't know the answer to a question and can't collaborate an answer, what would be the best way to respond? Excellent. The really smart teams will say, we're so sorry, we don't have that information with us and our team right now. Is it okay if we go back to our head office, find the details and send it back to you as part of our proposition or our presentation or our investment proposal.
Yeah.
You know, just play in character. You know, it's totally okay if you don't have the answer, because sometimes you're not going to have the right person in the room, or you won't have thought about it. But don't
lie.
Yeah, and don't hesitate. Just
don't fumble through it.
Yeah, just be like, sorry, just don't have that information, and confidently say we'll follow up. Just like in, I suppose, a real world sense. Just like if you're in a business and someone asks you a question, you don't know the answer, behave exactly the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah, these have been actually all some really good questions, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they want to add? Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for taking the time to put this info out there. Really helpful. Transparency and feedback is awesome to have. We're really glad that
we wish we'd had this when we've been doing what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're glad to try and make it a bit easier and more fun, because presentation should be fun.
Yeah, and especially since, like, you know, this particular event might not be the strength for a lot of teams, so we want to help make it as easy and as accessible as possible.
Definitely.
And
we want judging to be hard. We want it to be competitive.
Yes,
it's way more fun that way.
We want a challenge.
Yeah.
So, all right, might just see if we've got one last question. If not, we might call it a night.
Yeah.
So, question going once, going twice.
I think we're all good.
I think we're good.
Great.
Oh, thank you for
lovely.
the seminar. Looking forward to the competition.
So can't wait.
Definitely.
So feel free again to contact. You'll have Rhiannon's contact details via email. So feel free to get in touch if you've got anything further.
Yep.
Otherwise, you'll hear from us in the next probably 48 hours with a follow-up email with some content that we've covered tonight. And we're always here to help. You know, we competition should be a joy and a learning experience. So don't feel like it should be scary or challenging. We want to make it really fun and memorable.
Yeah. And again, if you guys have any feedback for us for this presentation, for this webinar for next year, definitely happy to hear it. We're kind of just
first time we've ever done this.
Flying by the seat of our pants here, guys. So if there's anything specific that you want to see, definitely let us know. Short of like interpretive dance, I'm pretty sure we're up for anything.
Yeah, cool.
So,
apparently I'm up for dancing. Good.
I said short of. No interpretive dance.
Yeah,
no interpretive dance.
All right. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We really appreciate your audience, and hopefully we'll see you guys absolutely kill it at Comp.
Yes, we'll see you there. Bye.
Great.